We are often destroyed not by what we avoid, but by what we chase. Inspired by Schopenhauer's view on attachment and illusion, she's beautiful, she's bold, she lights up the room, and all your instincts say go after her. But what if she's the one who will unravel you? What if the very traits that excite you are the same ones that will hollow you out? Schopenhauer warned, "The will often drives us toward what we think we want, until what we want consumes us. And when it comes to women, most men don't choose wisely. They choose reactively. They choose based on projection, not principle. And then they wonder why they're emotionally wrecked." This video explores Schopenhauer's hard-hitting, inconvenient diagnosis of why men chase the wrong women. The kind of woman who triggers your hunger, mirrors your wounds, and feeds your fantasy while destroying your foundation. You'll learn how to see the patterns, break the cycle, and stop sacrificing peace for passion. Subscribe if you're tired of falling for what breaks you. Like and comment if you've ever mistaken emotional intensity for connection. Schopenhauer warned that the will doesn't lead us to truth, it leads us to desire. And in the case of women, this desire often blinds men completely. You see a woman who lights something up in you, something raw, magnetic, consuming, and you think, this must be it. But what you're feeling isn't clarity, it's chemistry, and chemistry is a terrible compass when it's driven by emotional hunger. The truth is, the women you're most drawn to are often the ones least aligned with your peace. And the stronger the attraction, the more likely it's rooted in something unresolved inside you, not something real between you. You confuse intensity for intimacy. You believe that just because you feel deeply, it must be meaningful. But what you don't see is that many of these women are mirrors, reflecting your childhood wounds, your insecurities, your need to prove yourself. And when you chase them, you're not really chasing connection. You're chasing resolution. You want her to choose you so you can finally feel worthy. But Schopenhauer would say, no external conquest will ever fix an internal fracture. And the more seductive the illusion, the more devastating its collapse. The wrong women often come dressed as destiny. They seem to understand you, ignite you, challenge you. But they don't build with you. They don't hold you. They don't calm you. They keep you spinning. And you mistake that spinning for passion. You believe the highs justify the chaos. You become addicted to the uncertainty. You confuse the thrill of her unpredictability with the depth of emotional bonding. But what's actually happening is erosion. Slow, quiet, invisible erosion of your focus, your dignity, and your emotional sanity. These women don't destroy you on purpose. They don't need to. You do it yourself, by insisting on fitting her into a role she was never built for. You want her to be safe when she's dangerous. You want her to nurture when she's wired to provoke. You want her to choose you while she's still entertaining every option. And the more you project your fantasy, the less you see the truth. You were never building a future. You were surviving a cycle that Schopenhauer would say is rooted not in love, but in delusion. The worst part? You defend her. You rationalize. You tell your friends she just has layers, that she's been through a lot, that it's complicated. But it's not. It's just wrong. And because you've never had real peace in love, you don't recognize how destructive this dynamic really is. You've normalized emotional volatility. You've mistaken distance for depth. You've learned to call red flags challenges, and every time she pulls away, you chase harder. Because if you stop chasing, you'd have to admit you've been building your life around a woman who's not capable of loving you back. And here's where men lose years of their lives, stuck in an emotional maze trying to decode a woman who was never confusing, just not meant for them. Schopenhauer would call this the suffering of willful blindness. You don't suffer because she lied. You suffer because you refuse to see. And the moment you begin to separate attraction from alignment, desire from direction, that's when you begin to walk free. Schopenhauer would argue that most suffering in love comes not from betrayal, but from illusion. And the wrong woman isn't necessarily cruel. She's just a master of stimulating the illusion. She knows how to say enough to keep you invested, how to disappear just long enough to keep you chasing, how to show affection in microdoses while keeping full commitment forever out of reach. And because you're emotionally hooked, You convince yourself that these fragments are signs of something deep, but they're not. They're breadcrumbs, and the more you follow them, the more you starve. This woman becomes your emotional drug. Every message, every compliment, every lingering glance becomes a hit, and then she pulls away, withdraws, leaves you wondering what went wrong, and because you're no longer chasing love, you're chasing certainty. You double down. You call more. You text longer. You replay every interaction in your mind. But Schopenhauer would say this is not love, this is captivity. You're addicted to the high of potential. You're loyal to an idea, not a person. And that idea is killing your clarity. What makes this dynamic so toxic is that she rarely rejects you outright. She keeps the doors almost open, just enough attention to give you hope, just enough presence to keep you emotionally invested, but never enough to meet you where you are. And because men are conditioned to fight for approval, to earn affection, to prove they're good enough, you turn her avoidance into your mission. You think, if I do more, she'll choose me. But she won't. Not because you're not enough, but because she never wanted the version of love you're offering. She doesn't want stability. She wants control. She wants emotional leverage. Not always out of cruelty, sometimes out of her own wounds, but regardless of the reason, you're the one paying the emotional price. You're the one waiting for texts that never come. You're the one rehearsing conversations she won't remember. You're the one losing sleep over a woman who's already emotionally moved on. Schopenhauer would say, this is the man enslaved by his own projection, fighting to preserve a fantasy that has no interest in becoming real. And the most painful part, you start changing for her. You start adjusting your tone, your priorities, your friends. You dilute your boundaries. You tolerate disrespect, all in the hope that this time she'll stay. This time she'll notice your effort. But she won't, because she's not waiting for you to win her. She's using your pursuit to validate her power. And the more you give, the less she respects you, because deep down, she knows a man who gives himself up for attention isn't a man she can trust with anything else. It takes brutal honesty to break this cycle. It takes the willingness to admit that you've confused chemistry with compatibility, that you've equated effort with progress, that you've tolerated emotional breadcrumbs because you've never been fed anything better. And when that realization lands, when you see her clearly without the filter of your fantasy, you don't get bitter, you get free. Because the wrong woman loses all her power the moment you stop needing her to be right for you. The moment you sense she's slipping, you activate every instinct to fix. You become more available, more understanding, more patient. You start tolerating the intolerable just to keep the fantasy alive. And in that shift, you move from man to servant, from grounded masculine to emotional supplier. Schopenhauer would say, this is the will at war with truth. You don't want to see who she is, so you double down on who you need to be, not for authenticity, but for survival. And in doing so, you betray the very man she was once drawn to. The wrong woman doesn't ask you to prove yourself, but she knows how to keep you trying. She doesn't give you certainty. She gives you hope. Hope that if you do the right thing, say the right words, fix her wounds, absorb her mood swings, and accept the silence, she'll finally reward you with what you deserve. But here's the truth. The minute you're trying to earn basic emotional safety, you're not in a relationship, you're in a power imbalance. And nothing kills masculine integrity faster than bargaining for love. Men trapped in this dynamic start shaping their identity around her emotional availability. When she's warm, they feel confident. When she's cold, they collapse. They read books, watch videos, seek advice, all trying to unlock the formula that will make her consistent. But Schopenhauer reminds us, no amount of effort will stabilize what was never real. You're not failing to win her, you're failing to accept that she isn't yours to win. Because the right woman doesn't ask you to sacrifice your self-respect to prove your devotion. Worse yet, this cycle rewards dysfunction. The more emotional tension she creates, the more addicted you become to resolving it. The chaos feels like chemistry. The reconciliation feels like bonding. But it's not bonding, it's emotional fatigue, it's trauma reenactment. You're not being loved. You're being trained to believe that love means tolerating instability. And the longer you stay, the more you confuse emotional recovery with emotional connection. Schopenhauer would say this is suffering by repetition, replaying the same injury and calling it intimacy. And here's the brutal truth. The more you try to save the dynamic, the more you lose yourself. You stop listening to your gut. You ignore the disrespect. You forget what stillness feels like, because your entire nervous system is wired to her. And once you reach this point, the damage is no longer just relational. It's existential. You no longer just miss her presence. You miss your own. The man who once led his life is now chasing scraps of emotional attention from a woman who barely sees him. But this isn't where the story has to end. The moment you realize you've been trying to prove yourself to the wrong woman is the moment you reclaim your authority. You stop asking her to validate your worth. You stop thinking your love can fix her wounds. You stop needing her to come around. You look in the mirror and choose clarity over confusion, alignment over intensity, peace over the illusion of passion. And when you do, the woman who once destabilized you loses her grip. Not because she changed, but because you did. There's a shift that happens the moment you stop chasing, the moment you sit in the silence she used to fill, the moment you stop trying to decode her signals, earn her softness, or earn back the attention she used as a leash. That's when it hits you. Not as an idea, but as a full-body realization. She was never mysterious. You were just emotionally blinded by your own need. And Schopenhauer would call that moment the collapse of illusion, the awakening from a self-imposed spell. When you're inside the storm, everything feels justified. The confusion feels deep, the arguments feel meaningful, the volatility feels passionate. But step outside it, breathe, wait, watch, and you'll see something you couldn't before. It was never love. It was stimulation. She wasn't nurturing. She was feeding your addiction to being wanted. Her power came not from depth but from your dependence. And now that you've stepped back, the spell breaks. Her silence no longer hurts. It reveals. Her distance no longer wounds, it clarifies. This clarity doesn't make you bitter. It makes you sovereign. You stop assigning her the role of muse, redeemer, or fantasy fulfillment. You see her for what she is, a woman, flawed, free, and not meant to carry your unlived life. The same charm that once seduced you now appears hollow. The same unpredictability that once thrilled you now looks exhausting. You begin to ask, why did I want her to be more than she showed me? Why did I ignore every sign that she wasn't capable of mutual depth? Schopenhauer's philosophy becomes sharp here. We don't suffer from what others do, we suffer from what we refuse to admit. And this is the beginning of masculine clarity. You stop negotiating with red flags. You stop blaming yourself for her coldness. You stop calling dysfunction chemistry. You start recognizing that peace is not boring and chaos is not love. The women you used to tolerate, idolize, or chase lose their appeal, not because you've become closed, but because you've become clean. Clean from the addiction to emotional high and crash. Clean from the need to be chosen by someone who never valued your presence fully. When you stop needing her, you don't lose your heart, you find your backbone. You speak less, you chase nothing, you reclaim time, space, vision. You notice other women, not more beautiful, but more stable. Not more exciting, but more anchored. You realize you've spent years building fantasies on quicksand. And finally, you're ready to build on something real, not intensity, not mystery, but mutuality, clarity, grounded connection that doesn't require suffering to feel alive. This doesn't mean you hate her. It means you've healed from her. You no longer see her as a prize, you see her as a past version of yourself. The part of you that needed to be seen so badly, you ignored the cost. And now, the man you're becoming wouldn't tolerate her energy for a day. Not because she changed, but because you did. And that's what she'll feel the next time you cross paths. Not bitterness, not desperation, not blame, but the unshakable weight of a man who finally sees clearly. There's a strange habit men develop after surviving the wrong woman. They romanticize the chaos. They look back at the emotional highs and lows and think, at least it felt real. But Schopenhauer would say, The fact that it felt intense doesn't mean it was real. It means it was unresolved. You didn't grow in that relationship. You lost yourself in it. And if you're still drawn to her energy, it's not because you love her. It's because part of you still believes love should hurt. This is where many men stay stuck, not in the relationship, but in the memory. They keep her on a pedestal, in their mind, not because she was everything, but because she once made them feel like they were. For a moment, and that moment becomes a myth. They forget the silence, the mind games, the emotional starvation. They only remember the chemistry. But chemistry with the wrong woman is a spiritual addiction. And if you don't break the pattern, you'll chase different faces with the same dysfunction. You have to stop calling the storm passion. Stop calling her mood swings depth. Stop calling the apology after the drama love. That wasn't love. That was a performance you auditioned for without realizing it was never your story. She played a role, and so did you. And every time you replay it in your head, you're keeping the wound open, because part of you still wants to rewrite the ending. But the only way to rewrite it is to walk away from the script entirely. When you stop romanticizing the pain, you create room for peace. Not the fake kind where you suppress your feelings, but the real kind, where your nervous system no longer flinches when you hear her name, where you don't feel the need to defend yourself or blame her, where you can say, I wanted her, but I want myself more. That's not ego, that's liberation. And Schopenhauer would say, liberation only begins when the will is no longer seduced by what once broke it. The man who reclaims his emotional standard doesn't avoid love, he refines it. He chooses women who bring calm, not chaos. He stops being entertained by unpredictability. He doesn't chase spark, he builds fire with someone who shows up clean. And that doesn't make him boring, it makes him dangerous. Because now he's immune to the tactics. He sees through the charm. He can admire beauty without losing his frame. And the wrong woman can no longer touch him, not because she isn't trying, but because he no longer needs what she represents. So don't look back and miss her. Look back and thank her. Thank her for being the mirror. Thank her for revealing what you needed to heal. Thank her for showing you who you used to be and for giving you the chance to outgrow it. Then walk forward, grounded, clear, and no longer seduced by the fire that almost consumed you. You wanted her because she awakened something in you, because when she looked at you, you felt alive. When she disappeared, you felt lost. When she came back, even for a second, you felt chosen. But Schopenhauer would say that what you felt wasn't love, it was illusion. You weren't building connection. You were reacting to chemistry. And chemistry, when left unexamined, will pull you into places your soul can't survive. You didn't fall for her. You fell for the fantasy. The fantasy that maybe this time it would feel the way you always imagined. That if you gave enough, stayed long enough, forgave enough, she would finally become what you hoped she was. But the fantasy was never real. She didn't hide who she was. You hid it from yourself. And the longer you stayed, the more you confused intensity for intimacy, volatility for value, and silence for mystery. The truth is, she was the wrong woman, not because she was evil, not because you were weak, but because everything about her revealed where you still didn't love yourself. She showed you how quickly you'd abandon your peace for the thrill of being wanted. She showed you how easily your boundaries dissolved under the pressure of beauty and emotional distance. She showed you how loud your wounds could get when they sensed the chance to finally be seen. But she didn't come to save you. She came to expose you. And now you get to choose. Not her, not again, but you. You get to stop rewriting the same painful story and start walking a new path. You get to stop looking for intensity and start seeking alignment. You get to stop romanticizing what nearly destroyed you and start remembering who you were before you needed her to complete you. That man isn't gone. He's just buried under years of emotional negotiations with women who couldn't love him the way he needed, but whom he kept trying to win anyway. Schopenhauer taught that our deepest suffering doesn't come from reality. It comes from refusing to accept it. And the reality is, chasing the wrong woman isn't romantic. It's a form of slow self-erasure. Every time you explain away the red flags, justify the disrespect, tolerate the silence, you're telling yourself, My peace is negotiable. But it's not. Not anymore. Because the man you're becoming doesn't sacrifice himself for approval. He doesn't confuse emotional chaos with passion. He doesn't stay where he isn't seen. So let her go. Let the memory die. Let the fantasy collapse and walk. Don't run back to yourself. Because peace is waiting. Because clarity is waiting. Because a love that doesn't hurt like this is waiting. But it can only begin when you stop needing to be chosen by the one who never truly chose you. Subscribe if you're done building futures with women who only offer fragments. Like and comment if you're finally seeing her for who she was, and yourself for who you're becoming. Because when you stop chasing the wrong women, you don't just reclaim your time, you reclaim your power. And that's the man who never gets lost in love again.